Midnight sealed Buckingham Palace in a metallic hush. Under a single lamp, Prince William finally broke the silence he'd carried since his brother's exit. "They think I said nothing because I had nothing to say," he said. "They were wrong. No speech, no teleprompter, just a verdict. When my brother chose exit over duty, he left a wound in a house built to outlast every wound. Family is blood. Duty is bone. Break the bone, and even the blood cannot stand. No gossip, only consequence. Knights shoring up public trust, calendars rewritten, elders blindsided, courtiers firefighting. Set down the weight and someone else lifts it, and I did." One softened note: duty without love becomes cruelty, love without duty becomes ruin. Then steel again: we can disagree about style, not siege. You don't sell the map to the enemy and call it freedom. I held my tongue for the crown, for family, for a brother I'd follow into a burning building. He didn't ask me to follow. He asked me to watch it burn. By dawn, alerts blared. William refused interviews and went to work. In California, Harry drafted and deleted replies. The palace machine engaged. The public split. A leak called it a wider strategy. An old soldier's voicemail landed like orders: hold the line, but know what you're defending. Inside, a quiet war council stacked folders that read like operations: sentinel briefing, patronage continuity, and, at William's elbow, lines: what he'd defend, concede, or burn. Polling backed his bluntness but warned of brutality. "Frame it as duty versus personal brand and we win," Com said. "If it's brother versus brother, nobody wins." William: "Then stop calling him my brother. Call him the Duke." A Commonwealth note probed unity. William answered with 3 verbs: stay, build, deliver. A memo urged finality on commercial title use. Harry paced in a Californian sun that felt false, declined a prime-time invite, and stepped back from an unseen cliff. At sunset, William's lines became doctrine: crown obligations, service, neutrality, thrift, titled obligations, presence, restraint, renounced liberties. "Titles are scaffolding, not costumes," he said. Accusations of spite would come. Incoherence could not. Camilla asked about reconciliation. "That's a miracle. My job is policy." Before dawn, security hardened. Advertisers probed. A foreign letter demanded clarity. Bots spun fog. "Proceed," William ordered. Quiet briefings, letters patent, a leaner schedule. By evening, a stark notice barred commercial title use in perpetuity. Backlash flared. William held. He added a steel rule: carry the crown's title, carry its calendar. Harry drafted, "I will not be erased," then closed the laptop. That night, William prayed for clean lines. By morning, he refused studios, delivered architecture in a hall of vows, then shook hands in a community center. A foundation told Harry, stay as patron, title or not. The Privy Council inked the doctrine. William signed. Camilla watched, mask cracking at the edges, then went to guard the warm corners like fire. Rain thinned the protests to silhouettes and umbrellas. A flare hissed out at the gate. William watched the lights smear into lines and decided survival isn't glory, it's lines that hold when the water comes. In the chapel he found no miracle, only firm boundaries and his mother's warning: hold love and duty, or lose both. In a bare room he finally called the number he'd avoided. "The lines are set," he said. "I know," Harry answered. "Be well. You too." Winter hummed in the dial tone. Change arrived as lists and tightened calendars while commentators chased new storms. The brothers would speak without talking, or not at all. The institution remembered what it was made of, and the knight answered William's one request: truth, by simply holding. In the car, his secretary rattled updates: a deleted plea for reconciliation, a weaponized old photo, a celebrity sermon about brotherhood that doubled as an ad. Headlines showed teeth. Memory rose. The night Harry said, "I can't breathe in here." "Open a window," William replied. "They're nailed shut," Harry said, and fracture became boundary. William carried the damage like load-bearing stone. A leak called his move strategy, and theories multiplied. A soldier's voicemail cut through, "Hold the line, but know what you're defending." Outside, rehearsals for unrest played out in rain. Inside, a decision tree begged for clarity. William drew a line through it. No mouthwash. No semantics. He'd chosen his weapon, speech, and began lifting the siege. The aftershocks began before lunch and did not stop. Power in Britain seldom moves like a landslide. It shifts like a shelf of ice, silent, inexorable, until the coastline is different. William's words set the shelf in motion. Whitehall called the palace in the mild tone reserved for hot coals, asking for assurances of continuity. Code for, "Don't make this a constitutional migraine." Editors argued, family rupture or state event. Sponsors drafted careful sentences about heritage and stability, eyes on wind direction. A war council formed without the name. Folders stacked like operations. Sentinel briefing, a misspelling that became a private joke, patronage continuity plan, and on William's right, a cleaner word, lines, what he would defend, concede, and burn rather than see touched. He heard optics and precedent, then stopped listening and started deciding when an old Sandhurst friend mentioned morale. Camilla entered like an autumn draft. Expensive, unsentimental. "The public will tire of drama if we do not feed it," she said, sounding merciful as the temperature dropped. William nodded as one acknowledges weather. He didn't trust her counsel to be anything but self-interested, and that didn't disqualify it. Everyone had interests. His were welded to a flag. Charles phoned from the north, peat and wet stone in the background. "We must keep the center," he said, a stately ache in his voice. "Whatever we do, keep the center." Silence braided age, fatigue, and calculation. "Yes, sir," William answered, and gravity returned to the room. Polling arrived, not a landslide, a weather vane. A majority approved William's bluntness. A vocal minority called it brutal. Younger voters split, half admired the refusal to varnish pain, half saw proof the institution devours its own. "Frame it as duty versus personal brand and we win," the comms director said. "Brother versus brother, nobody wins." William's mouth hardened. "Then stop calling him my brother in briefings. Call him the Duke. Not cruelty, craft. A role can be defended. A relationship only bleeds." A Commonwealth capital sent a floral note edged with steel. Is the House united in its charitable commitments? It wasn't prying. It was testing. Nations are families too, and families sniff for weakness. William dictated a reply with 3 verbs: stay, build, deliver. Across the hall, a memo for the sovereign tackled the Harry question, proposing finality on commercial use of titles. Finality smelled like cold metal. Beyond the gates, the spectacle hardened. A jester danced under a fair play sign. A woman wept into a phone, certain she saw the window where the truth would appear. Police watched with the bored vigilance of people who know how fast boredom turns. A silver car slipped underground. Inside, a briefcase carried a single clipped sentence: "Love without duty becomes ruin." Back in California, Megan held the day together with tape. Fruit sliced, laundry folded, a producer's call about a project meant to be healing until healing became a storyline and storylines became cages. Harry drifted with the muscle memory of being filmed, lens inside him whether he fed it or not. He reread William's words and told himself silence could be strength if it wasn't surrender. A primetime invitation hummed like anesthesia. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He stepped into sunlight that felt like a lie. Escalation arrived like weather. A knife-clean reporter signaled, "Sources suggest the palace will formalize restrictions on commercial use of royal titles in perpetuity." In perpetuity didn't trend. It howled. Comment sections became theaters of war. Lawyers texted with cliff-edge glee. A retired court official intoned that boundaries should have been set years ago. An interviewer nodded like listening to rain. After sunset, the smaller room spoke architecture, not optics. The lines opened, the crown's obligations, service, neutrality, thrift. The titled obligations, presence, restraint, and the renunciation of certain liberties ordinary citizens enjoy and royal surrender on purpose. The hard truth, titles aren't costumes for endorsements. They're scaffolding, secure it or dismantle it. If they want to build without us, William said, they build without our beams. A soft-voiced lawyer cautioned, we'll be accused of spite. We can survive accusation, he replied. We cannot survive incoherence. He signed, not as sovereign, nor as grieving brother, but as the man who'd be asked one day why he let the house shift on rotten timbers and chose to do nothing. Camilla returned, praising clarity, fretting optics, then sliding a velvet blade. And reconciliation? William didn't blink. Reconciliation isn't policy. It's a miracle. My job is policy. For a beat, she looked almost impressed. That night, the palace glowed the way people pretend it never does. Rooms alive, phones hot, corridors whispering with shoes. Rain made the city shine darker. Across the ocean, Harry stood by a hedge listening to traffic like surf in a dream, thinking of beeswax, old oak, a boy's hand on his shoulder, and fire. He went inside and told Megan he wouldn't do the interview. Good, she said, and the word was tired. Close to midnight, William stepped onto a balcony that had seen more waves than war and more crowds than confidences. The air knifed his lungs. Somewhere a fox screamed like a child, then the city swallowed the sound. His hands found the cold rail, stone that felt permanent, arrogant, merciful. Inside, the line's document cooled to its final shape. Tomorrow it would move through channels that looked like custom and sounded like thunder. If it held, the crown would stand straighter. If it failed, he'd fired a gun indoors. He knew the odds and accepted them. He went back inside to sleep, or to perform sleep, because morning would come like another raid, and the shelf of ice would keep moving until someone chose the shoreline. The storm formed in the blue hours and struck as the clocks turned. The palace switchboard crashed, calls pledging fealty, calls demanding blood, all of them certain. Security tightened, extra eyes in hallways, extra locks on doors. In the bowels of the building, a printer choked out red-stamped folders while a staffer whispered a new phrase that tasted like metal. Operational posture. The lines had not left the palace, yet already the air carried their pressure. Voices dropped. Doors closed softly. Even portraits stood straighter. William convened a meeting that would never appear on a diary. They gathered in a narrow, tea-colored room behind heavy curtains. Phones surrendered to a felt-lined tray. A discreet jammer purred. A Commonwealth map hung with pins from a century's idea of reach. The private secretary's briefing was wartime sparse. Probing messages from advertisers, a legal letter from across the ocean asking for clarity of status, and a small, sophisticated disinformation push painting the palace as an employer of chains. Bot fingerprints were clear. Someone wanted fog. William cut through it. We proceed, he said, hardening the room. Proceed meant moving draft to protocol, quietly briefing the Privy Council on levers that wouldn't whip up a constitutional gale, setting crown lawyers, greyhounds who run in silence, on title usage language that could survive a siege, and redrawing appearances to speak service over spectacle, austerity over glitter, spine over smile. When words aren't safe, symbols are the language. He would speak in symbols until words became safe again. Hours moved like a clockwork raid. The private secretary slipped into a nondescript Westminster building where retired minds sat like loaded safes. Tea poured, the lines were explained, no gossip, only architecture. A courier in a cheap suit carried a sealed envelope to a chamber where Latin coiled like rope. The Lord Chamberlain drafted a memorandum in the tone of a menu. Each step left no footprint that couldn't be denied, yet together they hummed like power in a cable. Outside, the city answered with static. An unmarked van lingered by a side gate and vanished before questions caught it. A helicopter hovered at lawful height with predatory curiosity. A junior aide's inbox filled with invitations that were really traps. Online, an old clip of the brothers laughing was recut until kindness looked rehearsed and laughter looked cruel. Drown it or starve it? Comms asked. Starve it, William said. Truth needs an audience. Lies breed inattention. Across the ocean, Harry's phone flickered, not with offers but with edged questions. A legacy charity asked if he'd remain patron if his title usage grew complicated. A former comrade texted a vow and a warning. Harry drafted a statement, tore the page, started again. Megan touched his shoulder and stayed silent. She had made her decisions. His sat in him like a weight he couldn't lift alone. Camilla drifted into William's office with the poise of someone who's learned to walk through crossfire without catching bullets. "I can help make the case," she said. "Public duty requires public language." William's face was radio neutral. "The case is the work. We'll show them, not tell them. And when showing becomes the very thing you condemn, we'll keep showing." She left a degree of heat behind. By mid-afternoon, the Privy Council assembled like a breathing photograph from another century. Terms moved like chess pieces. Letters patent, usage rights, forfeitures, patronage succession, without names. "Will this hold in a storm?" asked the Attorney General's envoy. The palace lawyers near poetry. "If we build it true, weather proves the joinery." William spoke only at the end. "We are not punishing. We are preventing collapse." Less a sentence than a bridge to a future you can sleep in. Evening brought the thud of inevitability. A thin, antiseptic notice appeared, effective immediately. Certain titles could not be used in commercial settings. Endorsements, media projects, paid appearances. No names, just scaffolding. It wasn't tweeted. It quietly landed on a government page that also announces drainage consultations. Journalists smelled thunder anyway. In perpetuity, migrated from rumor to print. A production company's stock dipped. A board convened. A Los Angeles brand manager set down her kombucha and remade a campaign. Backlash queued itself. Professional empathizers cooking compassion into accusation, influencers donning tin crowns, politicians chasing camera-kissed morality. William absorbed it like a cliff absorbs waves. Surface altered, function intact. He scanned diplomatic murmurs and early legal positioning from overseas, then watched his breath fog the window and clear, fog and clear, like decisions before they harden into history. Before midnight, he added one bar of steel that would never headline but would be felt down the spine of the institution. Carry the crown's title, carry the crown's calendar. Absence counted. Presence required. Exceptions rare, justified, documented. Myth would keep a ledger. At the same hour, Harry finished a draft that was not a counterattack. It was a plea trying not to sound like one. Autonomy, oxygen, a life that wasn't exile until labeled that. A family that taught service, a press that taught bleeding. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I'm right," only, "I will not be erased." He read it aloud, felt it wobble, pictured his brother's older eyes, and closed the laptop. Just before the day died, William descended to the chapel. No cameras, no notes, no performance. Wood creaked, stones settled, a draft threaded hymnals. His prayer, if it was one, had no words, just a stillness he walked into. He didn't ask for victory. He asked for clean lines and the strength to hold them. Outside, the fox screamed again, ragged and human at the edges. Inside, the lines were no longer drafts. They were doctrine waiting to be lived. Tomorrow, weather would turn mean. He would keep the ship pointed. He would take the hits. The choice was made. The storm could come. Morning crashed like surf on iron. Policy had ossified overnight. Lawyers matched joins, courtiers stitched language. Cameras camped at the gates. The mall looked like a fortress disguised as a park. William dressed with a soldier's economy and stepped into a day that would either crown doctrine with legitimacy or drown it in noise. He refused studios and chose a hall that smelled of timber and vows. No teleprompter, a single lectern, the press corralled like flame away from silk. He began with family, named it, acknowledged the fractures, then moved it off the table like a surgeon removing an instrument before it complicates the wound. "This is not about affection," he said. "This is about architecture." He read the blueprint aloud, obligations and constraints, the refusal to turn titles into commerce or duty into costume. No California, no headlines, only beams and joinery. He took no questions, then drove to a community hall of damp coats and a kettle calendar, shaking hands that explained doctrine better than paper. The crown isn't a brand. It's a weather system. You don't buy it. You endure it. Sometimes you're sheltered. Sometimes you're soaked. Often both. Across the ocean, a plain font email bent Harry's day. An old, stubborn foundation would keep him as patron, title or no title. Mercy, quiet and durable. A producer offered a spotlighted letter to camera. Harry declined. It felt like stepping back from a cliff he hadn't seen. By afternoon, the country settled into brittle attention before verdicts become weather. TVs looped William's 5 minutes without cheerins. Students argued systems and souls until the argument was friendship or nothing. A nurse lacing shoes for night shift told her son why the princes didn't just call. Sometimes the phone is heavier than a car. And the lines, drawn in the blue hours, held. The day's second act wasn't words, it was ink. In a plain room, the Privy Council moved paper, finalized language, and tightened letters patent until doctrine became rule. It wouldn't stop rain or cure resentment, but it would keep the roof from buckling under a world that wants shelter and spectacle at once. William signed, feeling it leave his hand like a loaded object he couldn't carry and couldn't drop. At the palace, Camilla watched the feed with a professional mask that cracked at the edges. No message. None needed. The house had set its terms. She would live within them, guarding the warm corners like fire. Rain paired the city to umbrellas and silhouettes. A brief shout at a gate died in the wet. William walked past old portraits, paused at a window, and watched light smear into obedient lines. Survival, he thought, isn't glory. It's lines that hold when water comes. He returned to the chapel, found no miracles, only the relief of clear boundaries and his mother's warning. Love without duty becomes ruin. Duty without love becomes cruelty. Hold both, or lose both. Later, in a bare room, he finally called. A dog collar chimed on the other end. "The lines are set," he said. "I know," Harry answered. "Be well. You too." Winter in a dial tone. Night spread. A woman opened a window to let the cold push back. In California, a laptop closed and, at last, sleep came. A king's hand traced old stone. A prince exhaled one long breath. Morning would bring lists, clipboards, tighter calendars. Commentators would move on. Storms don't wait. Brothers might learn to speak without talking, or not. The world would keep asking for spectacle. The house would keep giving structure. In time, the shelf of ice would become the new coast. For now there is only the dark, the hush between clock beats, and an institution testing its old bones and finding steel. William stood at the window, the city washed in rain and silence, and he didn't ask for mercy or applause, only for the thing that survives storms. He asked the night for truth. And the night, fluent in endurance, gave its answer the only way it knows. It stayed. It held. It did not break. If you want the next chapter in these royal power plays, the betrayals, the lines drawn, the costs paid, tap like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what comes at dawn. Drop your take in the comments, and share this with someone who follows the crown's shadows as closely as its light. New episodes are coming.